Hello, Algebra 2. This is the agenda for October 27th. We're going to continue with your notes 29. This is day 2 of your notes 29. So if you can take your paper out from yesterday. And you have homework tonight. It's assignment number 30. There will be 4 problems at the last slide in this recording. And there's also a link for the PDF, a copy that you could print or look at in Google Classroom. Okay. All right, so if you can just listen for a minute. So this is the basic formula for the transformations of an absolute value graph. Today I added this little symbol that's a plus or minus A. So the A can either be positive A or negative A. When we write the symbol plus or minus, we like shortcuts in math, and that just means a positive or a negative. Depends on the problem, right? Okay, so that's all that symbol means. And we're going to analyze today what happens with A. Now I'm just reviewing and you're just listening. Remember that H, it either moves right or left. And it depends on the sign. And K moves up or down, and it depends on the sign. And remember that H is always counterintuitive. It's opposite of what we see. Okay. So we're going to move on. All right. So this is just a lot of words. So just hold on a minute. So this is the dilations for a transformation. It either stretches or shrinks the original figure. So the basic absolute value, and I want you to just listen, looks about like that. So what we mean by stretching it, and I just want you to watch for a minute. So stretching would be where it gets really narrow like that. Stretches up the y values. If it's shrinking, we call that shrink, then it gets really, oh, that's not good enough. Let me redo that one. It's really, really wide. Okay. So this is the basic shape. And this is a picture. The first one is for stretching. And this is for shrinking. And I'd like you to draw those pictures on your notes. Okay, and then not the words, okay? We don't need to do the words over here. I'll talk about the words, but I would like you to make a little bit of pictures, what stretching means and what shrinking means. Okay, you can hit pause if you need a minute. So what I want to talk about is I want to talk about when does this happen, okay? So, oops, I knew something happened there with my pen. Okay, so when this A, if it's a fraction, then you get the shrink. If it's a regular integer, so for example, 3 or 4, just a regular number, then you get a stretch. And that's what I would like you to write down as your notes. Everything that's right here. And then including these 3 pictures. You don't have to write down those words that are to the right. What that means, it just says if A is 1, So if it's a 1, a 2, a 3, or a 4, then it's a stretch. And if a is in between 0 and 1, then it's a fraction, like a half, or a third is in between 0 or 1, then it's a shrink. So that's what these words off to the right state. And you don't have to write those, just write down what's in highlighted in yellow. Okay? So that's called a dilation. It's the fancy math word. You studied that in geometry. Now we're going to talk about a reflection. So a reflection is when it flips the object over a line. So I'd like you to watch for just a minute. So we could have a graph. I'm going to do 2 graphs. Let me change color. I'd like you to watch for a minute. So if you had an absolute value that looked like this, shifted to the right, if it reflects over the x-axis, it would point down. That's what a reflection is. Okay? So that's all we mean by flipping over, just points down. The first one points up, the second one points down. So that's a reflection. Okay, so when does that happen? A reflection happens when this number here, so you can see right here, if a is a positive number, no reflection. So that means there's no reflection. It's just normal pointing up. Whoops, I didn't spell that right. Let me start over. So it points up. But if a has a negative in front, then it reflects. Oops. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Was there a topher? What happened? Uh-oh. Well, I keep hitting the wrong button because I got nervous. I'm sorry, you guys. So I lost the whole thing. Let's see. I'm sorry about that. I'm back. Okay. I was trying to move this thing at the bottom and I made a big mess. I apologize. Okay. So if your A has a negative in front, it reflects and it points down. I apologize for that. It happens. We're all doing the best we can. Okay, so I would like you to write this down as your notes for reflections. Okay, so we talked about how a graph got narrower or stretched, or if it got wider and shrinks. And then we talked about whether a graph reflects over and points down, and that's when we have a negative in front. And this is when it has a negative right here. Okay. All right, we're going to move on. You can hit pause if you need a minute. So now the directions say, it's important to read this, analyze the effect of the graph on the parent function. So we're going to just look at the a value today. So this is the part we're looking at, and I'm too close to the bottom. That's why that's happening. So we're just looking at the front part today. Yesterday we looked at the H and the K, didn't we? We're going to put it all together in just a minute. Okay, so this is a positive and a 3. So the positive is no reflection. And the 3 is a vertical. Is it stretch or shrink? This one's a stretch. So if you can write down the problem. So we're looking at the 3 and the fact that it's a positive 3. Okay, write down the next problem, number 2. Okay, so we're looking at these numbers. So the negative and the 2. So the negative, reflection, and the 2 is a vertical stretch. Oops, spelled that right. Stretch. Okay, if you can write down the next problem. We have a negative and we have a third. So the negative is going to be reflection. And the 1/3 is going to be a vertical shrink. And then the last one, it's a positive and a 2/3. So the positive means it's going to be no reflection. Points up, right? And the 2/3 is going to be a vertical shrink. So if it's a fraction. So a regular number like in the top two, number 2, so the 2 and the 3 made it stretch. The 2/3 and the 1/3 makes it shrink. And then whether it's positive or negative just tells you whether it has a reflection or not. Okay? So that's what we do with A. Do you remember what happens for H and K? Remember, H moves it right or left, and K moves it up or down. All right, if you need a minute, you can hit pause. Okay, so if you could just go ahead and write down A, B, and C problems, hit pause on the video, write down A, B, and C. Hit pause. Okay, so you should be back. And now we're going to go ahead and put everything together. We are going to describe all the transformations for what happens with A, H, and K. Now K has to be the easiest because K moves it up or down, moves it up if it's a positive, moves it down if it's a negative, right? That's easy. H, though, moves it right or left, but it's opposite. So it moves it right if it's a negative, and it moves it left if it's a positive. And that's kind of opposite of what you think it should do, okay? And then the plus or minus, we just went over that. is the reflection part. That's if it's a minus. And the A part, right? So this was the reflection part. And A, if it's a fraction, then it was a shrink. Regular number, it was a stretch. So we're going to put that all together now. Okay, so here we go. Positive 3, no reflection. And the 3 meant it's a regular number, so it's a stretch. So we have 2 things we need to write there. This means it moves left 7. And this means it moves down 4. So remember how I was telling you that think of this as the opposite? Because like down 4 makes sense because it's negative 4, right? So down 4. But why is something that has plus 7, you would think that should go to the right, because things to the right are positive and things to the left are negative, right? But remember how I talked about this has to be counterintuitive? So you're really thinking negative 7, and negative means left. All right, let's move on. So for this part, it has a negative, so reflex. And the 4 means it's going to stretch by 4. It's actually by a factor of 4. That's the fancy way to say it. But you can just put stretch by 4. Negative 5 means it's going to move to the right 5. And positive 10 means it's going to go up 10. And the last one. It's a positive number, so no reflection. And it's a fraction, so it's going to be a shrink. Positive 8, we think really negative, and negative means left. So it's going to go left 8. And then you can think of plus k is 0, right? K is 0. Remember how we talked about that? So no up or down because there is no k, right? K is 0. All right. So now on the next page, this is how you're going to do your homework, just like we did here. All right. Everything where you kind of draw arrows and describe the movement, that's how you're going to do your homework. And it's on the next page. If you need more time, hit pause here for just a minute. Okay. So copy the problems and then describe the transformations. Use the words moves right, left, up, down, shrink, stretch, or reflection. So this is your homework number 30. You can hit pause if you're doing this on paper. And again, this is on a PDF file on Google Classroom if you want to print it out. All right, thank you, you guys.